There is a particular kind of wisdom that arrives too late. Not too late to matter, but too late to change the years that shaped you, the decades you moved through quickly, confidently certain that understanding would come when you were ready for it. Most people spend their 60s believing they have finally arrived somewhere. The urgent years are behind them. The children are grown. The career has settled into something familiar, and there is a quiet comfort in that, the feeling of having made it through the difficult part. What they don't see is that a different kind of difficulty has just begun. Not the difficulty of building or striving or proving. The difficulty of being, of knowing who you are when the roles that defined you start to fall away. Of knowing what to do with time when time no longer tells you what to do. Buddhism has been asking these questions for 25 centuries, not as abstract philosophy, not as ritual or doctrine, but as a direct investigation into the nature of human suffering, why we hurt in the ways we do, why we hold on to what we should release, why we postpone the things that matter most until the window for them quietly narrows. What's striking is not that these teachings are difficult to understand. They are not. What's striking is how long it takes to feel them, to move from knowing them in your mind to understanding them in your bones. In this talk, we will explore 10 of those truths, not as lessons to memorize, but as mirrors held up at this particular stage of life where the reflection is clearest. Some of what you hear may feel familiar, like something you always sensed but never had words for. Some of it may land in a place that is still tender. That is not a warning. That is simply where the most important things usually live. If you are somewhere in your 60s, your 70s or beyond, or if you love someone who is, stay with this, not because it will give you answers, but because some questions asked at the right moment change the way you see everything that follows. Truth 1. The life you keep postponing is already happening. There is a word the earliest Buddhist teachings return to again and again, as though it were the most important thing a human being could understand: anicca, impermanence. Not impermanence as a philosophical concept, not something to contemplate from a distance, but as a lived reality, the quiet, continuous fact that everything you are holding right now is already in the process of becoming something else. The moment you are in is moving, not towards some future version of itself, away, without asking your permission. The teaching was never meant to frighten. It was meant to wake something up. Somewhere in the middle years of life, a comfortable assumption takes root. There will be time for the rest of it later. Later you will take that trip. Later you will have that conversation. Later you will stop moving so fast and simply be present for the life happening around you. Later feels responsible, practical even, like you are keeping your priorities in order, waiting for the right moment before you commit to something as fragile as joy. What you do not feel in the middle of all that waiting is the window narrowing, not slamming shut. Nothing so dramatic, just quietly, incrementally becoming smaller, the way a door left unattended moves so slowly you don't notice it closing until the light on the other side has already gone. The most painful thing about postponement is not the loss itself. It is how the loss arrives, not as a single moment of reckoning, but as a slow accumulation of small realizations, each one gentle, each one undeniable. You realize the years when you had the energy to say yes to things spontaneously. They did not wait for you to finish being busy. They moved through you and kept going. You realize the conversations you meant to have, the relationships you let go cold, the phone call you kept, meaning to make. These did not pause while you were deciding. They aged. Some of them aged past the point of return. This is not guilt. It is simply what anicca has always pointed toward, stated plainly. The life you are waiting to live is already occurring. It is this afternoon, this ordinary and unremarkable stretch of time that does not look significant from the inside, but which viewed from any distance at all turns out to have been exactly the thing. There is a question some contemplative traditions invite practitioners to sit with at the end of each day. Not what did I accomplish, but simply, was I present for what happened, not perfectly, just there, actually inhabiting the hours rather than passing through them on the way to somewhere else. The practice is not to fix anything, it is to notice. Because noticing is the beginning of a different kind of attention, the kind that treats an ordinary Tuesday like it matters. Because it does. It all does. Truth 2. Forgiveness is not for them. It is the weight you are still carrying. Most people think of forgiveness as something you give to another person, a gesture of generosity, a decision to release someone from what they owe you. And because it is framed that way as something they receive, it is remarkably easy to withhold, especially when you are right. Especially when the hurt was real and the other person never acknowledged it, never apologized, never showed any sign of understanding what they had done. Why would you offer something so significant to someone who hasn't earned it? This is where Buddhism quietly reframes the entire question. The tradition does not ask you to pretend the harm didn't happen. It does not ask you to minimize what was done or to decide that the other person deserves your warmth. It asks something far more precise and far more personal. It asks who is still suffering because of this. Not them. They have moved on or they haven't, but either way, your holding on has no effect on them. The one who carries the weight of an unresolved wound is always the one doing the carrying. And what feels like standing on principle, like dignity, like self-respect, is often, if you look at it clearly, just pain that has been given a more acceptable name. Pride can dress itself as principle for years, decades even, and all that time the distance hardens into something that starts to feel permanent. There is a particular grief that belongs to this stage of life, one that younger people have not yet encountered. It is the grief of the conversation that will never happen now. Not because you chose not to have it, but because the choice was made for you quietly by time. Someone you loved or someone you once loved before the silence grew too wide is gone. And with them went every version of the reconciliation you kept telling yourself you would eventually get around to. No resolution, no apology, no moment of two people deciding together that what they had was worth more than what divided them. Just silence. And silence at that point has a weight that doesn't go away. Buddhist teaching on forgiveness is not sentimental. It doesn't promise that letting go will feel good immediately, or that the other person deserves it, or that the relationship will be restored. What it observes with the same clear-eyed precision it brings to everything is that resentment is a form of continued suffering that you are choosing to maintain. Not consciously, not because you enjoy it, but because releasing it feels somehow like losing something. Like admitting you were wrong, or that the harm didn't matter, or that you are simply giving up. None of that is true. Putting something down is not the same as pretending it was never heavy. If there is someone in your life right now, someone you have not spoken to, something left unresolved that you have told yourself can wait, this truth is not asking you to do something grand. It is asking you to consider the cost of waiting, not to them. To you. The window for certain conversations does not stay open indefinitely, and the ones that close before you walk through them have a way of becoming the ones you carry longest. You don't have to be ready. You don't have to have the right words. You just have to go first. Truth 3. Retirement reveals what you never built. For most of your working life, the question, Who are you had a ready answer. You were what you did, what you provided, the role you showed up for every morning and carried home every evening. And that answer was enough, not because it was complete, but because the structure of daily life never gave you long enough in one place to notice what it was leaving out. Then, one day, the structure ends. Retirement arrives with the feeling of a reward. And for a while it is. The relief is real. The freedom is real. Mornings without obligation, days without urgency, these feel at first like exactly what you earned. But something else arrives too quieter and harder to name. You wake up without a clear reason to get moving. You have time, more time than you have had in decades, but no current to carry you through it. And what nobody warned you about is how disorienting that stillness can be. How a life built entirely around external demands leaves very little infrastructure for the moments when those demands simply stop. Drifting, it turns out, is not the same as resting. Buddhism has sat with this question far longer than the modern concept of retirement has existed. At the heart of its teaching on identity is a recognition that most human suffering around who we are comes from the same source we build our sense of self, on things that were always temporary. A job title, a role in a family, the way other people need us. These are not false, they are real and they matter, but they are not the ground, and when they shift, as they always eventually do, what is left standing reveals whether there was anything underneath them. This is not a failure. It is simply what the teaching calls anatta, the truth that the self you constructed over a lifetime is more fluid than it feels, not meaningless, not something to mourn, but not something to cling to as permanent either. The invitation is not to abandon identity. It is to ask, perhaps for the first time with real urgency beneath every role I have ever played, what is actually here? That question is not comfortable, but it is one of the most alive questions available to a person at this stage of life. Because the answer, whatever it turns out to be, belongs entirely to you. Not to your career, not to your family's needs, not to the version of yourself that was built for someone else's purposes. Retirement does not take something away. It simply removes what was covering everything else. Truth 4. Your children need your presence, not your wisdom. There is a shift that happens in the relationship between parents and adult children that almost no one prepares you for. For decades, your role was clear. You guided, you corrected, you held the map when they didn't know where they were going. And that role was not just something you did, it was in some deep way part of how you understood yourself as a parent. Being the one with answers felt like love. It was love expressed in the only language the moment seemed to call for. But children grow, and the language has to change with them. What most parents don't see, not because they are not paying attention, but because the habit runs so deep, is the moment when guidance stops feeling like support and starts feeling like doubt. Doubt in their decisions, doubt in their ability to navigate their own lives. Doubt underneath all the good intentions that they are really capable of figuring it out without you. They rarely say this directly, they pull back instead. The calls become shorter, the visits feel slightly more careful, and the parent, noticing the distance, often responds by trying harder, offering more advice, more solutions, more of the very thing that created the space to begin with. Buddhist teaching on compassion makes a distinction that is easy to miss in translation. It separates karuna, true compassion, from what is sometimes called idiot compassion, the impulse to fix, to rescue, to remove difficulty from someone's path because their struggle is uncomfortable for you to witness. True compassion, the teaching suggests, is not about eliminating another person's experience. It is about being fully present within it, alongside them, not ahead of them. This is a harder thing than it sounds. especially when you love someone, especially when you can see clearly what you believe they should do. But presence without agenda is its own kind of offering, sitting with someone without trying to redirect them, listening not to find the right response but to actually hear what is being said. These are not passive acts. In the Buddhist understanding, they are among the deepest forms of care available to one human being toward another. The relationship most parents want with their adult children, one of genuine closeness, of being truly known and trusted, rarely comes from being right. It comes from being safe to be honest with. And that kind of safety is built not through advice, but through the quiet, repeated experience of being heard without being corrected. You don't have to stop caring, you just have to care differently. That is not a loss. That is what love looks like when it finally grows up. Truth 5. The body keeps score, and it has been keeping score for decades. There is a particular blindness that comes with a body that mostly works. When nothing is seriously wrong, when you can get through the day, climb the stairs, carry the groceries without stopping to think about it, the body becomes invisible to you. Not neglected exactly, just unnoticed. A reliable background condition like the hum of a refrigerator you stop hearing because it has always been there, and then somewhere in your 70s the hum changes. It rarely happens all at once. That is part of what makes it so disorienting when it arrives. It begins as small adjustments, moving a little more carefully here, avoiding something that used to be effortless there. You adapt so gradually that each individual change feels manageable. It is only when you look back across several years that you see how far the distance has grown between the body you had and the body you are now navigating. What the research on aging has shown, and what people who have lived long enough simply know, is that the body does not forget what you asked of it or what you withheld. Every decade of movement builds something that remains available to you later. Every decade of stillness collects a debt that eventually comes due. The body, in other words, is always accounting, quietly, patiently, without complaint, until it isn't quiet anymore. Buddhism does not treat the body as an obstacle to wisdom or as something to transcend. The earliest teaching on mindfulness begins precisely here, with the body as it actually is in this moment. Not idealized, not feared. Simply observed with clear and honest attention. There is a reason the tradition starts there. The body is the most immediate truth available to you. It is always in the present. It cannot pretend, cannot defer, cannot tell you it will deal with things later. It simply reports what is with a directness the mind rarely matches. To care for it is not vanity. It is a form of attention, the same quality of attention the contemplative traditions have always pointed toward. Showing up for what is real rather than for the more comfortable story about it. If you are in your 60s, this truth is still useful. In the fullest sense, there is still time to build something that will carry you. If you are further along, it is not a reproach. It is simply an invitation to begin where you are. The body you have today is the one you will need tomorrow. Not a younger version of it, not a different one. This one, exactly as it is. Truth 6. Loneliness after 70 is a different kind of silence. There is a loneliness that most people know, the kind that comes from being physically alone, from having no one nearby, from an empty house or a quiet phone. And then there is another kind, harder to name, harder to explain to someone who hasn't felt it yet. It is the loneliness of being surrounded by people who love you and still feeling somewhere beneath all that warmth profoundly unknown. After a certain age, the circle doesn't just get smaller. It gets quieter in a specific way. The people who disappear are not only friends, they are witnesses. They are the ones who knew you at 35, who remembered the person you were before the roles accumulated, who could say your name and mean the whole of you, not just the version that survived into old age. When they go, and they go one by one, in the way that time takes people, something goes with them that cannot be replaced. Not by family, however loving, not by new acquaintances, however kind, because no matter how much your children love you, they did not know you when you were still becoming yourself. They know the finished version, the one who had already made the decisions, already lived through the consequences, already arrived at whatever you arrived at. The people who knew the earlier drafts are the ones who are gone. Buddhism speaks of kalyana mittata, what is sometimes translated as noble friendship, or more simply, the companionship that genuinely nourishes the soul. The tradition considered this not a comfort or a luxury, but a condition, one of the foundational requirements for a life of meaning and awareness. The Buddha, when asked whether noble friendship was half of the spiritual life, is said to have replied, "It is not half, it is the whole of it." That framing matters. It means that tending to real human connection is not something you do after the important work is finished. It is among the most important work there is. The mistake many people make is believing that the friendships they have built are enough, that at this stage of life the circle is complete, the effort no longer necessary. What they discover gradually and then suddenly is that a circle that is not actively maintained begins to contract on its own. Connection requires the same attention as anything else you want to keep alive. This is not a warning about dying alone. It is something quieter than that, an observation about what it means to be truly known by another person and how rare and worth protecting that is. Don't wait until the silence has a shape before you decide to fill it. Truth 7. Time after 60 does not slow down. It compresses. When you were young, time had a different texture. A summer felt long. A year felt like it contained multitudes, distinct seasons, different versions of yourself, enough space for things to begin and end and begin again. You could feel the weeks passing. There was grain to time the way there is grain to wood, something you could run your hand along and feel. Somewhere after 60 that changes. It is not that the days become shorter. Each one still has the same hours, but the years begin to lose their edges, the boundaries between them soften, blur, until you look back and find it difficult to place exactly when things happened. 3 years ago and 7 years ago start to feel like the same distance. A decade can pass and leave behind surprisingly few landmarks to mark where it went. This is not memory failing. It is something more structural than that, a shift in the way time is experienced when life contains fewer genuinely new things. Novelty, it turns out, is what makes time feel spacious. When each day moves through familiar rhythms, the mind processes it quickly and files it away, and quickly processed time is time that does not leave much of a trace. The years don't disappear, they compress. Buddhism does not offer a way to slow this down. It makes no such promise. What it offers instead is a redirection of attention away from the quantity of time and toward the quality of presence within it. The Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki once observed that the problem is not that we have too little time, but that we are rarely fully inside the time we have. We move through our days at a slight remove mentally elsewhere, planning ahead, processing what just happened, and in that remove the hours pass without being fully inhabited. The teaching that follows from this is simple though not easy. Any moment you are genuinely present in becomes, in some meaningful sense, larger than it would otherwise have been. Not longer, larger, more real, more available to you as something that actually occurred rather than something that merely passed. An ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Sunlight on a familiar surface. a conversation with someone you love about nothing in particular. These do not look like the things a life is made of from the inside. They look like the spaces between the things that matter. But from any distance at all, a year later, a decade later, standing at the edge of what remains, they are exactly what you were living for. The question is not whether you have enough time. The question is whether you are inside the time you have. Truth 8. Fear does not end you. It just changes the shape of your days. Nobody teaches you how to be afraid at this age. When you were younger, fear had a different quality. It was about the future, about things that hadn't happened yet, outcomes that might go wrong, uncertainties that could still be navigated if you were careful enough, prepared enough, smart enough. That kind of fear had energy in it. It moved you. The fear that comes later is quieter, and in some ways harder to carry. It arrives not as a single thing, but as a slow accumulation. The first diagnosis that reminds you the body is not permanent. The friend who deteriorates faster than expected the morning. You wake up and realize that the losses ahead are no longer abstract. They have names now, shapes, a proximity you can feel. Most people respond to this by not responding, by keeping busy, staying distracted, moving fast enough that the fear doesn't have time to settle. And for a while that works. But the quiet has a way of finding you anyway, in the middle of the night, in the pause between one thing and the next, in the unexpected moment when something small, a photograph, a particular quality of afternoon light, opens into something much larger than you were prepared for. You cannot outrun this kind of fear. It lives at the same address you do. What Buddhism offers here is not reassurance. It does not promise that everything will be all right, or that the losses will hurt less than you expect, or that there is some practice that will make the fear stop arriving. What it offers is a different relationship to what arrives. The teaching on abhaya, often translated as fearlessness, has nothing to do with the absence of fear. It describes instead a quality of steadiness that can exist alongside fear, not in place of it. The capacity to feel the full weight of uncertainty without being entirely consumed by it. To remain even in the middle of what frightens you recognizably yourself. This is not a small thing. It may be one of the most significant capacities a human being can develop. There are still mornings, even now, when something ordinary, a cup of coffee, the particular silence of early light, holds more than it used to. Not despite everything that has changed. Because of it. Fear, when you stop running from it, has a way of clarifying what actually matters. It strips away the things you only thought you cared about and leaves the real ones more visible than they have ever been. It does not end you. It just shows you with unusual precision what you are still here for. Truth 9. Memory is the most fragile thing you own. You don't notice it happening at first. A name that takes a moment longer to arrive than it should. A detail from a conversation last week that has gone slightly soft at the edges. A story you have told many times, and the sudden uncertainty about whether one of the details is still right or whether it shifted somewhere along the way without you noticing. These feel like small things, and individually they are. But underneath them is something larger, a quiet recognition that the record of your life, the accumulated texture of everything you have lived through, is not as fixed as you once assumed. It is being held by something that was never designed to hold it forever. What surprises most people is not the forgetting itself. It is the nature of what disappears. Not the large events, those tend to stay anchored by their weight. What slips away first are the smaller things, the exact sound of your father's laugh, the particular way a kitchen smelled on a Sunday morning 40 years ago, The precise words someone said to you on a day that mattered more than either of you knew at the time. These are not trivial losses. They are the texture of a life. The granular, specific, unrepeatable details that no photograph captures and no official record preserves. When they go, something genuinely irreplaceable goes with them. The Buddhist concept of smrti, most often translated as mindfulness, but rooted in the older meaning of remembrance, begins with a simple premise: what you do not attend to. Fully in the present, you cannot recover completely later. This is not a warning about aging. It is an observation about attention itself. The moments you move through quickly, half-present mentally elsewhere, these do not get stored with the same clarity as the moments you actually inhabited. Memory keeps what presence provides. And presence, most of us discover too late, was something we rationed more carefully than we needed to. There is a practice available to anyone at any age that requires no special equipment and no particular discipline. Write it down. Not for posterity. Not to leave something behind for others, though that may happen, but for yourself, because the version of you that exists 10 years from now will want to know what this felt like. The specific, ordinary, irreplaceable details of a life that is still right now in the process of happening. The way the light falls in a particular room. What someone's presence felt like before it became a memory. What you are living through before it becomes what you lived through. Write it down now, while it is still warm. Truth 10. You are not the role you played. You never were. Somewhere along the way, without meaning to most people, make a quiet trade. They exchange the open question of who they are for the more manageable answer of what they do. Parent, provider, professional. The one who holds things together, who shows up reliably, who can be counted on. These are not false identities, they are real, and they carry real meaning. But they are roles, and roles by their nature are things you perform for a context that eventually changes. When the context changes, the question returns. It returns in retirement when the structure that organized your days simply stops. It returns when the children no longer need you in the same way, when the house gets quieter, when the mirror shows you a face that doesn't quite match the one you still carry in your mind. It returns in the long hours of an ordinary afternoon when there is nothing required of you, and you discover with some surprise that you don't entirely know what to do with that. This is not a crisis. Though it can feel like one, it is in the Buddhist understanding one of the most honest moments available to a human being. The teaching of anatta, often translated as non-self, is one of the most misunderstood ideas in the entire tradition. It does not mean you don't exist. It does not mean your life has no meaning, or that the love you gave was somehow illusory, or that the person who showed up for all those years didn't matter. What it points to is simpler and stranger, and ultimately more freeing than any of that. It suggests that the self you constructed, the accumulated roles, the identity built from decades of being needed in specific ways, was always more fluid than it felt. Not a fixed thing you either have or lose, but a living process capable of change, capable of becoming something that fits who you actually are, rather than who the circumstances required you to be. The roles were real. You are more than the roles. This is not something that arrives as an insight. It arrives as a feeling, quiet, gradual, and easy to miss if you are not paying attention. The feeling of sitting somewhere without performing anything, without being useful, without being needed, without filling a function, and discovering in that stillness that something remains. Not nothing, not emptiness. Something that was always there underneath everything you were asked to carry, patient, unhurried, and entirely your own. You were never only the role. You were always also this. There is a moment that comes sometimes in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. Nothing is happening particularly. The light is doing what light does at this hour. The sounds of the house or the street or whatever is outside your window are familiar enough to be almost invisible. There is no urgency. No one is asking anything of you. The day is simply continuing the way days do, without requiring anything dramatic from the people living inside them. And in that moment, if you are still enough to notice it, there is something available that was harder to find when life was louder. Not answers, not certainty, not the resolution of everything that remains unresolved. Just the quiet, unmistakable sense of being here. Alive in this specific afternoon, in this specific body, with this specific and unrepeatable collection of everything you have loved and lost and carried and set down over the course of a life that is still, even now, in the process of happening. Buddhism does not promise that this stage of life will be easy. It makes no such offer. What it has always suggested quietly across 25 centuries of looking directly at the nature of human experience is that the things most worth having are not the ones that arrive when circumstances are finally right. They are available now, in the impermanent, unfinished, ordinary now, not because everything is resolved, but because presence does not require resolution. The 10 truths in this talk are not a list of things to remember. They were never meant to be carried that way. If something landed, if one of them touched something that had been waiting to be touched, then it has already done what it was here to do. You don't need to hold it carefully. You don't need to get it right. You just need to stay a little more awake to the life that is already yours. Not later, not when things settle, not when you finally feel ready. Now, in this unremarkable, irreplaceable moment, which is, if you look at it clearly, exactly where everything that matters has always been waiting for you.